Hello everyone, welcome to today's webinar entitled Social Media on a Shoestring, Doing a Lot with a Little. My name is Christy Farmbaugh and I'm the Innovation and Engagement Director here at the Ohio Arts Council. Part of my role is to plan and facilitate professional learning opportunities for the field. Webinars like this one are being offered because constituents have told us you'd like to learn ways to do your work more efficiently and effectively. And today we have over 125 people registered for this session, so clearly social media and doing a lot with a little is a really important topic for all of you. Before I introduce today's presenter, Lindsay Fullerton, I want to give you a few technical details about the webinar system. Everyone on the line is muted or in listen-only mode. This will cut down on feedback during the conversation. When we get to question and answer time, if you'd like me to unmute you and let you have a chat with Lindsay, we can do that. There is an option for that. I think you can do it too on your control panel. We'll use the question box in the control panel to capture your questions for Lindsay along the way. I'll monitor those and we'll facilitate a Q&A at the end of the presentation. I know Lindsay will take a poll during the session and I'll help facilitate that for her, so please give us your feedback accordingly. Be really honest, we can't tell what organization is answering what way, but it will help Lindsay know how to give you her best advice based on who's on the call today. This webinar is being recorded, and I'll send a link out likely the first of next week once it's ready and processed, and you can listen to it again or share it with your colleagues next week. And after today's webinar, you'll receive a link to a brief survey in your email inbox. Please take 5 minutes to give us your feedback about today's presentation. It's how Lindsay can work on her presentation and make it better and more relevant, and it's how we know to help us design more professionally meaningful opportunities for you in terms of your professional development. And now I'm really pleased to introduce today's webinar presenter, Lindsay Fullerton. She's the founder of New Media Consulting. Lindsay is the founder and principal of New Media Consulting, a social media strategy and research firm headquartered in Cleveland. Lindsay has more than 10 years experience in social media research, marketing experience with nonprofit and corporate sectors. She holds a degree in marketing from the University of Pennsylvania and a PhD in communication studies from Northwestern University. Lindsay and I have not actually met in person. We've talked several times on the phone, but Ken Emmerich here in our office, who works with individual artists, and Lindsay have connected, and I just know you're going to really enjoy today's presentation. So with that, Lindsay, take it away.
All right, thanks so much for that introduction, Christy. I'm really honored to be here with you all today, and thank you so much for joining me about the discussion about social media. I hope to give you some helpful insights into social media strategies and how to implement them in your organization, even if you have limited resources. And Christy went into what New Media Consulting is all about today. We do social media consulting and research design. But I'm really excited to be here today with the Ohio Arts Council because I'm really passionate about helping nonprofits make sense of social media and research questions. And I actually started by working with nonprofits in Chicago, which is where I'm from. And I really love helping nonprofits and arts organizations achieve their goals. So this is a really great venue for me today. So I'm going to start off by talking a little bit about the place of social media in today's technological landscape. So if we could think back to 2005, only 7% of the U.S. population used one or more social media networking sites. And by 2015, that figure rose to 65%. And of those who use the internet, 3/4 of Americans use social media. So anyone of any age who has the internet, 75% of them are currently using social media. And that was in 2015, and the numbers are increasing still at this point. So just beyond its popularity, social media is really an important venue to share your organization's message and mission, and it's a great way to interact with your audience directly. So it's important to be on social media, but how exactly do you manage it? And I asked Christy to put up a poll today of the people who are attending just to get a sense of who manages social media in your organization.
So you should see the poll on your screen, and you can choose your answer there for Lindsay.
And so it's really common to be a social, especially in a nonprofit organization, to have a social media team of one or even multiple people sharing the roles.
All right, we're getting close. We're at 86%. A couple more seconds.
Great.
Get those votes in there. All right, I'm going to close the poll. And I never know how to, so the results are this, Lindsay. 48% have an individual who does social media part-time, and 46% have multiple people working together. No one has a full-time person, and only 6% say no one.
Okay, great. Yeah, and I think that is probably the most common situation for nonprofit organizations, or actually most small to mid-sized organizations, where they have someone doing social media part-time, or everyone kind of shares the task together, or several people work on social media together. So that's really great to know. And so hopefully, even under these conditions where most organizations will not have a full social media person, you can accomplish the task of creating a social media strategy and implementing it, and hopefully in a way that is not too scary, overwhelming, or time-consuming. And so that's what I'm going to go into now. So first, how can you best support your organization's mission on social media? So the first step is going to be developing your social media strategy. And I'm going to go through this process at sort of a top-line level because it'll be different for every organization, but hopefully this will give you a taste of what you can expect. And then next, implementing your strategy and making the most out of the content and information you have. So first off, what is a social media strategy? So it basically is the sum of all of its words. The social media strategy is a plan that is used to help align your social media activities with your organization's missions and goals. So you might have an overarching strategy as an organization about how you're going to proceed. And this is your strategy for your social media work. And once it's in place, the strategy organizes and directs all of your social media activities. So you can keep referring back to it to make sure you're on track. So there's a couple steps to developing your social media strategy, and I'm going to go through each one of these in turn. So the first is to focus on your goals. So similar to an organizational strategy, you want to have some specific goals in mind when you are working with social media. Next, you're going to want to define your target audience. After that, you can think through your content, consider what exactly your organization has to offer. Next, you choose the right social media platforms, and I'm going to walk you through some of the pros and cons of different platforms. After that, you set a schedule for yourself or your team on social media, and then finally, you go and track your results. So in order to develop a social media strategy, it's really important to get organizational buy-in from the start. So even if someone in particular focuses on implementing social media part-time, it's really important that you get people in different roles from all different levels of your organization actually developing the strategy itself. This is because social media is not a standalone activity, and it should be integrated with other marketing, membership, and organizational goals. And this may take time in order to actually integrate social media into your organizational goals, but it's something to start thinking about, and then hopefully over time you can work with it more. So first off, what are your goals? So this, of course, is going to be different for every organization, and every organization has different goals that they're trying to achieve. And this ties back into what is your mission? And when thinking about your social media strategy, what exactly are you trying to achieve by being on social media? And again, this will be different for everyone, but some potential areas for social media goals include engagement, trying to have more conversations. You may be trying to increase membership. You may be wanting to achieve some fundraising goals, or attendance goals. And it's definitely wise to at least have one goal, but more is definitely fine. And when you're developing these goals, you should try to make them SMART goals. And this is not something I came up with, but it's just a way to make your goals very concrete and specific. And so SMART, the acronym here, stands for specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, and timely. So you could say that you have a membership goal as sort of a broad goal, but then I put up an example of a SMART goal related to membership, which is just hypothetical. So that could be gaining 25 new memberships through our online forum who say they were brought there through social media by May of 2017. So that accomplishes being specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, and timely. The next thing to think about is your target audience. And sometimes people get tripped up because they think that their target audience is anyone who will sort of come through the door. But your target audience really is not everyone. And you've probably considered this a little bit as part of your organizational strategy. So again, with social media, you want to think about who you're trying to reach through social media. Who are your key audiences? And again, you could have more than one target. You probably don't want to have too many, but anywhere from 1 to 3 targets is probably reasonable. Who you choose as a target will end up influencing the types of social media decisions you end up making and what channels you decide to be on. So the next step, which might be the most fun step, is choosing your content. So what you share on social media should be a reflection of yourself or your organization. So be sure to choose wisely what exactly you're putting up on social media. You don't want to just put up anything that comes to mind. So before you put up any piece of content, it's useful to consider, is it valuable to your organization? Will it be valuable to your target audience? And when you're thinking about your target audience, this will also influence how you frame your information. So for example, if you're targeting your message to donors versus members versus non-members, you might say things a little differently. And again, finally, what tone will you adopt to represent your organization? You're going to be serious, more lighthearted. Again, it depends on what type of organization you are. So when thinking about what to post, this depends a lot on your specific organization, and the options are pretty much endless. So it's fun to sort of brainstorm some ideas before you get started posting on social media. And it could be anything that would be useful and interesting to your target and is in keeping with your organization's goals and larger social media strategy. So I've listed just some potential categories here. Obviously, don't feel limited to these categories. These are some general things you might post about for your organization. So this is a big question a lot of organizations have, because we're all, at this point, somewhat familiar with at least some social media channels, and we probably are on them in our personal lives. But when it comes to choosing what social media channels to utilize for our organization, several factors should come into play. So again, you don't have to be on every social media channel, and it's definitely a quality over quantity scenario. It's better to be on fewer channels that you pay attention to and update frequently versus being on every channel and only updating them in sort of a haphazard or infrequent way. So the first things you need to consider are, first, the amount of time you have to dedicate. This will be really important. If you only have a little bit of time to dedicate to social media, that's fine, and you should choose your channels accordingly, and you should stick to fewer. Next, the demographics of your target. So think back to what type of people you're trying to reach out to. And so this will influence which channels you're going to pick, because certain people are on certain channels. And then finally, the nature of your organization and the resources you have. So for example, if your organization does not really have much video content, then I would say that most organizations probably could create some some video-based content, but again, some might not have as much or might not be your focus. So in that case, you might not want to be on a video network, for example. So I'm just going to talk about some of the top networks, their pros and cons, and some of their demographic backgrounds. So we all know Facebook. Facebook is the most popular social media site. It allows users to post and interact with content in a news feed, either with friends, family, or other organizations that they like. And you can post text, images, and video. And so this is a sample page from Signal Return, which is a nonprofit letterpress studio in Detroit. And they do a really good job of sharing images, video, events, all sorts of things. And that shows how Facebook is good for daily communications. You could post a little bit longer updates on Facebook. There's more room for text. It's great for photos and videos. And if you want to delve into advertising, which we're not really going to talk about today, Facebook is the best way to have very targeted advertising. And so basically, in terms of demographics, everyone is on Facebook. Even 56% of the U.S. population above the age of 65 is on Facebook. And the demographics of Facebook are actually aging a little bit, even though everyone, probably not everyone, but a majority of the people from the ages of 18 and up are on Facebook. It is most popular with people who would be considered in Generation X or baby boomers. And the downside of Facebook is that you can only post a few times per day before people start to get a little sick of seeing what you're posting. So you have to be a bit careful. Next is Instagram, another social media site you're probably familiar with. And so this is an online photo, video, and social media site that primarily focuses on visual content. And this is an example Instagram page from the Museum of Contemporary Art in Chicago. And they have a nice mix of artwork, events, visitors, famous people who come to see them. So it's a great representation visually of the organization. And Instagram is good for visual content, event coverage, and behind-the-scenes updates. And so Instagram is actually owned by Facebook, but it skews a lot younger than Facebook. So over half of Instagram users are between the age of 18 and 29. And the downside to Instagram is you can't put links in your posts, and it's harder to share text. So it really is mostly just for images. Next is Twitter. So Twitter is a social media site that enables users to send and read short 140-character messages that can then be shared and interacted with. So this is an example Twitter feed from the site ArtNet that is very active and has over 1 million followers. They do a great job of sharing content related to arts organizations as well as promoting their own content. So Twitter is great for short updates and visuals, and is good for one-to-one interactions with your audience or other influencers. And Twitter, more than the other sites, skews a bit male, and the two most popular age groups are between 18 to 29 and 30 to 49. And the caveat with Twitter is sort of part of its nature. You can only share 140 characters. You can't really share extensive stories, and you have to be very brief in terms of what you're sharing. Another site that is actually pretty good for a lot of arts organizations, but some don't consider, is Pinterest. So Pinterest is a social media site that allows people to post images onto thematic boards, which then can be liked and shared by others. So this is an example of a board from an artist's site where she's sharing her artwork. And Pinterest is great for visual content, for sharing curated images, and if you happen to be an organization or individual that sells things, Pinterest is nice because you can link directly from the image to the sales page. So you could actually pretty much send people directly to your shop through Pinterest. So Pinterest skews female, and it has a pretty broad age distribution about a third of its users are between 18 and 29, a third between 30 and 49, and 27% that are from 50 to 64. And again, this is a good site for visual topics, but if your topic is not necessarily visual, Pinterest is probably not for you. Next, we have another site that everyone's probably familiar with, and that would be YouTube. And it's a popular video sharing site, and it is big with all kinds of organizations. And here you can see the Museum of Modern Art's YouTube page, which is an extremely popular page. It's a great place for sharing behind-the-scenes video, broadcasting events, talks, or webinars, or other informational content. And the demographics of YouTube are extremely broad, and the largest population on YouTube is the age group 25 to 34, and that group alone is 41 million people. So that just gives you an idea of how huge YouTube is. And another interesting stat is that YouTube currently reaches more 18 to 49-year-olds than any cable network in the US. So just think about that. And the only downside to YouTube is sometimes it seems like more of a broadcast media than a true social media. So for example, you may get not too many comments, and you might feel more that you're broadcasting versus actually having a conversation. And so those are the big networks. Those are the ones most people will have in mind to consider. But there are some others that if you have somewhat different demographics or goals, you should look at as well. So another site a lot of people are on for personal reasons is LinkedIn. But you could actually also use LinkedIn as an organization. And this is especially useful for organizations that their target audience is not an individual, but it's other organizations or businesses. And it's also a good place for thought leaders, and there's a focus on expertise, so that might relate to particular types of organizations. Next is sort of a little thought of social network, but one that's actually still pretty popular, Google+. And Google+ has become more of a niche social network, but it is still popular for those who are more into technology, technical industries and fields, and it serves as a place to share your insider industry knowledge. And then finally, one of the most up-and-coming social networks that you've probably started hearing about is Snapchat. And Snapchat actually exists only as an app on your phone, and it is for sharing pictures and videos, and it's really great for behind-the-scenes content and for doing on-the-fly visuals that aren't really polished necessarily, and it is huge among a younger audience. So if you're targeting college-age students or younger, definitely be on Snapchat. So another question to consider is how often to post. And again, there's no one-size-fits-all answer for this, and it really depends on your particular organization and your goals. But how often you post, you can narrow it down a bit. So first, you want to consider the platforms you're on. So due to the nature of these sites, you can post more on Twitter and Pinterest because there's already a large volume of posts. If you post more frequently, people will accept that, versus Facebook and LinkedIn where you need fewer posts. So Facebook, you could probably post a couple times a day at most, and LinkedIn, you should probably only post once a day. Instagram, you could post a couple times a day, but not too many. And then second, you should think about your own intent to post. And a big thing here is consistency. So if you've committed to posting one time a day on Facebook, you should try to keep up with that versus posting 6 times a day, one day, and then posting once a week the next. So just keep in mind how you've been posting and try to stay consistent with that, because that will actually show you the best results, because people will know sort of what to expect from you and when to hear from you. And so the last step of developing a social media strategy is looking at your analytics and how you are doing. And again, this is a huge topic. It will be very different for every organization, and I could talk about this for an additional couple of hours. But in short, Analytics show you what is working and what is not working. And so basically, if you log into your Facebook or Twitter accounts, you can get into your statistics on Facebook. They're called Insights. And it will do a breakdown of how your posts have been performing over the past set amount of time. You can look at the past month, past week, longer periods of time. And it will tell you which of your posts have performed the best, how many people have liked them, and Twitter provides similar analysis. Also, if you have access to your website, meaning you are the person who's actually running it or somebody in your organization is running it versus it being run by a third party, you could also look at Google Analytics, which will tell you where the traffic to your website is coming from. And you could actually see in Google Analytics how many referrals you're getting from Twitter, from Facebook, etc. So what you specifically look at goes back to your initial social media strategy goals. So again, this will be different for every organization. But regardless of what your goals are, it's important to see if the things you've been posting have been successful or if they haven't been, and to sort of adjust your strategy accordingly. So that was a brief overview of how to develop a top-line social media strategy. And after you and your team have discussed this, the next step is actually implementing the strategy. So how can you implement this on a day-to-day basis in the most painless way possible? So I'm going to lay out 4 steps to integrate this social media strategy into your daily routines and to work with the content you have. So the first step is assembling your team and getting them on board. The next is scheduling your content, because scheduling is actually one of the greatest ways to do a lot with a little. Next, developing some original content by using resources you already have. And then finally, maximizing and repurposing your content. So after your social media strategy is developed, the next step is to share the strategy with the team, to get it in writing and to get the team on board. So you've taken the time to develop this strategy. Now you need to disseminate it. And so another thing that is great for organizations is to have a social media brainstorm. And this could happen monthly, could happen more frequently than that, but monthly is a good place to start, where all of your team, or at least a representative from each different part of your team, gets together to brainstorm and discuss social media ideas. And so again, even if not everyone is involved directly in marketing or social media, they should be involved because it's good to get input from all different parts of the organization. So the brainstorm can be pretty informal, and it's basically just to get everyone on the same page for what types of social media events and things you want to be talking about in the next month. So it's important to note upcoming events or milestones for your organization. So an easy one there is obviously you're going to have some events that you want to publicize, but there may be other things like a 10-year anniversary, an anniversary of how long the executive director's been with you, or other sorts of milestones you're going to want to publicize. Another thing to look at are holidays or upcoming local or national events, and you're going to want to be mindful of that. And so here you can see an example from the MCA in Chicago, where on Father's Day they posted to their Instagram pictures of kids with their fathers at the museum, which was a nice tie-in to Father's Day. And you could probably think of some other tie-ins that might be appropriate for your organization. And then finally, a really great thing to talk about in a social media brainstorm is content your team is working on that should be posted to social media. And I'll talk a little bit more about that later, because chances are, even if the person is not working on social media directly, they're working on something that can be shared to social media. So it's good that everyone in the organization is thinking about that in advance. So the next step is to assign responsibilities. So about half of the people on this call said that there was one person managing their social media on a part-time basis. So chances are that person is going to be responsible for all these tasks. But the other half said it was going to be multiple people. So now's the time to sort of step back and think about who is going to be doing what. So who's going to be creating the content, posting it, checking the social media accounts, and responding to comments. And you can divide this in a variety of different ways. Some people might be responsible for different channels, or different days of the week, different people check different channels. So it's important to just sort of get this in some sort of writing and put it down so people know exactly what they are responsible for. And the next step that I think is really important is developing a routine and a set time of day to check your social media. So social media is the type of thing that can expand to fill whatever amount of time you give it. So if you have a full-time person working on social media, they can be doing that probably 24 hours a day. So obviously that's not realistic for most organizations. So it's good to sort of fence off a set amount of time to work on social media every day. And it doesn't have to be a huge amount of time. Even in a half hour to an hour, you can accomplish a lot of things that will basically set up your social media for the week. So every day you at least want to check to see if you have any messages or mentions and make sure you're responding to those. Scheduling future posts. So again, after this I'm going to talk a little bit more about scheduling and how that can help you accomplish a lot. And then finally, sharing links or content from others. So if others are tagging you in posts, you want to respond to that and share that in real time. So one of the best time-saving tricks is that you do not have to post to your social media in real time. Obviously, you can do this sometimes, and there's nothing wrong with that. But especially if you want to post multiple times a day, it may not be realistic that you're going to be sitting in front of Facebook and posting it at 9 a.m., noon, and then 5 p.m. Instead, you can actually schedule this content ahead of time, put it all in at once, and then it will automatically post for you. So within Facebook, you could actually schedule content directly within Facebook. Other sites, it is not integrated into the site itself, but you could actually use some third-party tools or apps that will allow you to post, to schedule things to post later in the day. So I'm going to share today two of my favorite social media management tools. And they both have free versions, and they are Buffer and Hootsuite. And so they both basically have the same premise, and that is that you log into all of your different social media accounts. So in this case, it would be the social media accounts for your organization. And what you can do then is track who's mentioning you on social media and schedule posts for each of your different social media channels in advance. You could go into these programs, and especially in the free version of Hootsuite, you can schedule dozens of posts in advance, and then they will go out without you having to do anything further. So this is a great way that if you know you have about an hour to just pump out a lot of social media updates, to basically schedule everything for the week. So a great next step is to then develop a social media calendar. And again, I'm just going to go over this in a very top-line way. But a social media calendar will help you focus your efforts and keep you on track. And this can be a Google Doc that you share with your team. It could be a spreadsheet on your server. But it's important that this is sort of something that's public-facing within your organization so that everyone can know what your plans are for social media and what you're doing. So this is where you plan your social media for the month, and you can include what channels you're going to post on, when you're going to post, and then what topics you will cover. So this example social media calendar is from Constant Contact, and you can see that on specific days they talk about what social media channel they're going to post on, and then the general topic for what they're going to post. So on December 2nd, they're going to thank their customers for shopping on Small Business Saturday on Facebook. So this takes the guesswork out of what to post. And again, this can be as detailed or as general as you like. Some people like to put in exactly the text of what they're going to post on each day so that they don't have to think about it. Or you could just put the subject matter that you know you're going to post about an event in the following week, and then you could come up with the text later. But a social media calendar is a really great way to keep yourself organized and to record ideas as you have them, so you're not scrambling at the last minute. And it also helps you keep track of things like holidays, when you're sending emails. It's just a great way to be organized. So, and this may seem obvious to some people, but I feel like it can't really be overstated. Your phone is actually one of your most useful social media tools. So everyone at this point has a phone, at least with a camera on it, for the most part. And so Buffer and Hootsuite have apps. You could schedule things on the fly. Twitter and Facebook have apps. And actually, Instagram and Snapchat exist primarily as apps. So you will need a phone, pretty much, to use both of those. And this is great for when you're out and about trying to capture an event. You can accomplish a lot of your social media activities while you are actually out and about. And so another great tip to think about is that the key to doing a lot with a little is that you don't have to create all of your content from scratch. So of course you're going to want to update people about what you're doing in your event, but you should also be considering some other things. You can share other organizations' information on social media as you see it. You can share information posted by your audience, mentions of you by your audience, or mentions from other outlets, like if there are news articles that have been written about you or anything of that nature. And you should also repost and reutilize content you already have. And so here's an example where the American Theater Company retweeted a post by one of the performers about how they were excited to be in this specific performance. So it's a great way to show appreciation for people who are interested in your organization, but it also helps cut down on your time. So sharing content from others takes the pressure off you to come up with 100% original content. And it showcases others in your community and makes you seem less promotional. So in general, the rule of thumb is that a third of posts should be about your brand, a third should be about others in your industry, and a third should be personal interactions. And Stephen Shattuck at HubSpot adapted this rule of thirds specifically to nonprofits. So a third should be appreciation posts where you're recognizing others. A third should be advocacy posts where you're sharing other related nonprofits or organizations' information. And a third should solicit donations or help or be specifically about you. So obviously you don't have to section it exactly into thirds, but it's good to think about sharing this general type of information. And so another thing to note is that the top reason people unfollow brands and organizations on Twitter is that there is too much self-promotion. So you want to promote yourself, but don't go overboard. And so here's an example from the Studio Museum in Harlem of how they are sharing content from an organization that they're partnering with, the Queens Museum. So it's great to highlight other organizations that you have worked with and to feature their content. But another thing is that you can feature content that is related to your organization or that your target would find interesting, even if you don't have a specific relationship with that organization. But if you think it's something your audience would be interested in, it's a good thing to share. And it's also a way to potentially start building conversation with organizations that you already don't have a partnership with. And so if you have an active presence on social media, others will often tag your organization when they mention it on their own social media. And when you log into your account, you're going to start being notified of these mentions. So you should keep track of mentions from your audience or other organizations and share those on the appropriate channels. And if your team members, volunteers, or other people are featured on other venues, be sure to share notes about those accomplishments as well. So here's an example from the Alvin Ailey Facebook page where they shared a really interesting article that had been posted about them from a Scottish newspaper. So again, they're not necessarily promoting themselves, but they're just sharing what others have said about them. So again, if you keep up with your social media account, you're going to get questions, you're going to get comments, but you're also probably going to get content. So here is an example where the Metropolitan Opera retweeted a photo that a fan had taken of their building. So obviously this is a great photo. It's a great way to share an image of the Metropolitan Opera, but also a great way to show appreciation for the fan that went out to post it. And so this promotes opportunities for conversation, and also helps you because you are not having to come up with this content. And another thing that's useful is you should do periodic searches to keep track of mentions of your organization that do not specifically tag you. So even if someone just says, I went to the Metropolitan Opera and took a photo, you should do a search for Metropolitan Opera so you can keep track of that even if they didn't include your Twitter handle. And so now it comes time to think about creating your own content. So if you're wondering what to post, chances are you're already working on something that would be perfect for social media. So here are some examples. If you're working on a grant report and there's some testimonials that are really wonderful and can be shared publicly, you should put those on social media too. If you're downloading photos, you can share those. So whenever you come across this sort of content, you should add the ideas to your social media calendar. And it may seem counterintuitive at first to think of everything as potential social media content, but it will start becoming more natural as you keep thinking in that way. And so another great way to cut down on the amount of time you spend creating content is looking at the content you have already created in the past. So this sort of evergreen content is content that is not specifically bound by time and can be shared at future points. So do you have reports, newsletters, previous blog articles that you can share now? So it's good to just sort of think about what do we already have so I don't have to start from scratch. And another good thing is to take advantage of Throwback Thursday, which is today, by using the hashtag TBT on Facebook and Twitter and Instagram, so you could feature older content or events that were in the past. And again, you could add these ideas into your social media calendar so you will have them for the future. And when you're creating your own content, one of the best things to share that a lot of organizations don't necessarily think of is insider info. So you want to think about what makes your organization unique. So aside from sharing events or things you're doing, what can you share about your organization that other people would like to know or think is really cool? So it's great to feature your staff, your volunteers, visitors, artists, and performers. And behind-the-scenes information is especially great because only you have the power to showcase it. So you really will be putting something interesting and unique out there because nobody else has the same insights into your organization. So here's an example from the Georgia Museum of Art Snapchat, where they put up a series of photos and videos of the actual installation of an exhibit. And another great time-saving trick is to create an image repository. And this could be on Dropbox or a server or just a folder on your computer where you put some of your favorite photos and other visual content. And so then when you're actually uploading posts into your scheduler, you won't have to scramble for an image. You'll have some images already put out there and they'll be easier to find. And this is great for social media, but it's also great for newsletters, emails, or grants. So you already have your best photos at hand. And so briefly, visuals are extremely important on social media. Visual content is more than 40 times more likely to get shared than any other type of content. So every piece of content you share should have a visual component even if you have to create it yourself. So that comes back to the image repository. And people are accessing social media increasingly by mobile phone, so keeping text brief is a good thing. So here is an example tweet from the Santa Fe Music and Art Society, where they talk about a senator and the chair of the National Endowment of the Arts who came to visit them. So that's a really important thing that happened, and they could have just kept it as a text saying that these people visited, but by adding an image, it makes the tweet so much more powerful and so much more interesting. And even beyond images alone, video is super important to try to integrate into your social media strategy. So video is even more engaging than images. Social video generates 1,200% more shares than text and image combined. And so you're going to have to think a little bit outside of the box for video. So YouTube obviously comes to mind first, but in the past year, other social media networks have started to add live video options where you could actually broadcast when you're doing something, so Facebook Live and Periscope on Twitter. And this is great for events, Q&As, behind the scenes, and just chats with people who might be in your organization. And you really don't need high production values. And that prevents a lot of people from doing video because they think, oh, I don't have the right equipment, I don't know what to do. But you don't really need anything other than your phone. Another tip is to tie into timely opportunities that may be specific to your organization. So if there's a news story or something happening in the public eye that is worth tapping into, you should definitely see if you can tie your organization in. So here, the LA County Museum of Art, in honor of Andy Warhol's birthday, put up a photo of Warhol soup can along with one of their associates dressed up like Andy Warhol. So that was a fun share that got almost 3,000 likes. And so I've talked a lot about why scheduling is important, but it's also good to go live when the time is right. So if you're taking photos of an event on your phone, you can use this opportunity to post live. So this gives people the opportunity to see your organization in action, even if they can't attend the event. And you can do this on Instagram, Twitter, Snapchat, Facebook Live, a whole bunch of different areas. So related to when you're covering an event, one of my favorite tricks is repurposing content. You can take one single event and turn it into dozens of posts that you can release over the course of a couple of days or even months later. So using the photos and videos from the event, you can approach each post from a different angle. So I've made a list here of a bunch of different theoretical types of posts you can have from a single event. You could tweet during the event, live images, share live videos, share a recap photo album, post videos on YouTube, repost content from members who were at the event, put thank you posts on Facebook. So the list goes on and on. This is not even exhaustive. And so once you have all this great content that you're developing from the reports, the newsletters you already have, the events you're throwing, another great tip is to cross-post. So you could reach more people across channels by cross-posting either manually or automatically. So for example, Facebook posts can be automatically shared to Twitter, and Instagram posts can be automatically shared to Facebook and Twitter. And so you do this within either the app or the site itself, but you could basically link up these accounts, and this assures that your content is seen by as many people as possible, and this also cuts down on your effort because you're only writing one post, but it could be seen in 3 or 4 different venues simultaneously. Another tip is that for certain types of content, you could actually share it multiple times to increase your reach. So you can post a link to a report or a photo album multiple times over several weeks if you post it at different times during the day and if you tweak the message slightly each time. And this technique works well because you're likely going to reach different parts of your audience at different times, because there's no way that everyone who likes you is going to be on Facebook or Twitter at the same time. And so this is a great way to get your word out without spending the time to create extra content and to capitalize on the content you already have. So finally, once you have created all of these different social media profiles and you're active with them, you need to connect all your different communications. So it should be easy for people to get from one social media channel to the next, and you should try to include links to your social media pages on your website, preferably on every page. So here is the homepage for the Cleveland Museum of Art, and at the bottom there's a little menu that pops up with all of their different social media profiles on every page. So that is really handy. And you should also add social links and buttons to all your emails and share your social media links on other communications, like newsletters, when it's appropriate. So finally, you should be constantly checking your analytics to see how your strategy is working. You should just keep monitoring your results, see how you're progressing towards your goals. And you don't have to be a stats expert, but over time you will be able to see what works and what doesn't work and what you're going to need to tweak. So creating a social media strategy is a constant work in progress, and your strategy and implementation will evolve over time as you gain experience and refine your techniques. So I hope you took away some useful tips and techniques today to bring back to your organization to help you develop a social media strategy of your own and to put that into place. So this is only the tip of the iceberg when it comes to social media, and every organization has unique needs. So if you want to chat more about developing a social media strategy or other issues that your organization may be having, I would love to help you make sense of that, and I'm offering a special offer for those who are on this webinar, a free 30-minute strategy call, which is going to only be available to those who are attending the webinar today. And if you're interested in that, just go to my website, which is New Median Consulting, and fill out the contact form, so /connect, and fill in your email address and just a general description of your topic with OAC webinar as the subject, and I will get back to you. So thank you so much. Appreciate you spending this time with me, and I guess now it's time to go to some questions if there are any.
There are, Lindsay, there are questions. Thank you. Oh my gosh, what a really comprehensive walk through social media. I've heard some of those tips and tricks before, but it's always good to be reminded about what we should be working on. And I especially liked your point about repurposing grant application testimonials, because many of you who apply to us, you write those in your final report, so why not use them on social media as well? Great reminder about purposing content. So we do have a couple of questions. The first one is, can you provide a little more clarity, Lindsay, around the features of Hootsuite versus Constant Contact and how they might or might not work together? That comes from Laurel.
Okay, sure. So Constant Contact was one I didn't go over as specifically, but I know that it's primarily used for email messaging and that sort of thing. So Hootsuite's focus is more on monitoring who's commenting on your social media, who's mentioning you on social media, and then for you to schedule your own social media. So Hootsuite itself doesn't really have any email functionality, but it's more for monitoring your own social media presence and scheduling posts. So they kind of have different focuses.
Yeah, great. Awesome. Thanks. All right, here's the second one. Ellen asks, because there can be more text in a Facebook post, is it wise to always link posts between the two, or would you suggest creating separate content?
I would say that it doesn't necessarily have to be mutually exclusive, but yes, that point is well taken, because sometimes or most of the time, you'll have more than 140 characters in your Facebook post. So when you're automatically posting that to Twitter, you'll only see about the first sentence, and then the next thing you'll see is a link back to Facebook. So then that is directing your Twitter traffic back to your Facebook. So I would say that that is good to have that, but then in addition to that, you can copy your Facebook post link and then put that directly into Twitter and then create a custom message around that that will fit within the 140 characters. And you can put those at different times of day, so then you're reaching different people.
Great. So there's the next two have to do with analytics. I'm going to kind of group them together. Anne-Marie wonders if there's an equivalent to Facebook analytics on Instagram. And then related to that, Lindsay, is about, are there fees associated with analytics tools?
Sure. Okay. So that's a great question about Instagram. So actually, for the time being, Instagram has been talking for a while about the fact that they're going to be rolling out integrated analytics, but that is actually not something that they have done for all accounts yet, so that may be available. But as of now, there are no integrated analytics in Instagram. So in order to do that, you'll need to download some apps. Either you'll need to just monitor it by yourself and put the information into a spreadsheet, because you can see the number of likes, shares, and that sort of thing in Instagram, but you may have to track that manually. Or there are other apps you could download, and some do have a fee associated with them to look at your Instagram stats. One of those is called Iconosquare, which has some good stats, and you can do a free trial of that, but then it is eventually pay. But then for Facebook and Twitter, those analytics are free. They're accessible to you once you just log into your account. And Google Analytics is a great one too, and that's for monitoring your website, so sort of traffic to your website. And you have to set that up through Gmail, but that is also free for you to use. And then through Hootsuite and Buffer, and especially Buffer, will provide you with analytics for the links that you share. So once you have shared posts or links through Buffer, you can then look at how well those are performing, and that is free. But if you are wanting some more robust analytics, or you have someone who's really interested and can work with analytics, there are other programs that you can pay for that will provide you with a lot more advanced information. And those can include, there's a program called Sprout Social. That is a really good one. There's fees associated with it. And HubSpot. So those are sort of for more advanced analytics. But you can start by doing a lot with what you get for free. And I would recommend that everyone start there. And then if that ends up not being enough, or you want to get more advanced, then start checking out paid options.
Great. Yeah. I always like free options first, but sometimes you got to chip in a little bit, right? Which relates to our next question, which is, how do you boost on Facebook, and is it effective?
Sure. So there's been a lot of talk about how over the years Facebook's organic reach has gone down, and that has been documented. And that basically means that if you are just posting on your Facebook wall, either as yourself or your organization, that over time is seen by fewer people relatively than it had been in the past. And the main reason for that is that the amount of posts on Facebook are growing so rapidly that things get pushed lower into the Facebook feed more quickly. So whereas something might have been at the top of a feed for 10 minutes, now it might only be 3 minutes. So boosting posts is effective, and you can do that directly from inside your Facebook once you have set up your payment information. And you can boost either just a single post, you can boost a specific event so more people are seeing it, and this is paid. And you can start with doing this for as little as $5, per day, and then it will cut you off after a certain point, or you could spend more money on it. So it is effective, and again, it depends on what your goals are. So if your goal is to increase awareness or to increase likes for your Facebook page, it could be useful to boost your page or create an ad related to your page, because that will obviously get more eyeballs on your page. So again, it goes back to what your specific goals are, and if boosting the content on Facebook will help you to achieve that.
Great. Well, we've done a little experimenting here at the Ohio Arts Council with boosting and sponsoring posts, and we tend to say, Facebook is free until it's not, and so
Right.
once we have discovered, once we started paying and boosting, our organic content that is not boosted or sponsored doesn't get seen very much. So those algorithms in Facebook are pretty interesting, I think.
Yeah, and it is a moving target too. They're changing. They change what goes into the algorithm pretty frequently. So it's a learning process for everyone, and it is kind of a lot of trial and error too, to sort of see. And it's different for every organization because it depends on what types of things your audience likes to see. So I like to tell people to start out, if they want to do that, with a very small budget and start to see what works, and then maybe invest some more money once you start to see some positive results and you know more what to do.
Right, absolutely. All right, so we're just at the end of our hour. There's one last comment, which is a really good reminder about, Nigel reminds us on the call that if you are working with children or you're connected to a school, photo release forms are really important from parents and children before you post wildly on social media. So just a cautionary reminder about that, about release forms from people. I don't know if you want to weigh in on that at all, Lindsay, but it's a good reminder.
Sure, yeah. I think if it's something like a public event, that is easier to know that you probably have permission to share. But if you are sharing something like testimonials, or if you're featuring children, it definitely is good to get permission. And I take the approach that it's better safe than sorry. You should always, if it's something you're not sure of, you should always ask if it's okay to share, and get the person's verbal or written confirmation so that you're not surprising someone with something that just shows up. So yeah, definitely, and especially with things having to do with children, it's definitely important to get the parents' consent and make sure that it's okay to share on social media before you put it out there, rather than putting it out there and then seeing what happens. So I definitely think that is a great point.
Right, absolutely. All right, we're going to come to the end of our time together. Thanks again, Lindsay, for a really meaty and full, rich webinar on social media. Just as a reminder, I recorded the call today, and once the recording is set, likely early next week, I'll send you a link to that. It'll be in a Dropbox folder. The files are big, so I put them in Dropbox. We'll send you all a link to that who have been on the call. Watch your inbox for a survey to give us a little bit of feedback on how you thought today's webinar went, and I'll share that with Lindsay. And we'll see you in a month. Our next webinar will be in November. Watch your email for that, and we're going to talk about ways to be accessible for people with disabilities. Again, a lot with a little, and that is a theme for us. So have a great rest of the day, and thanks for joining us.
Great. Thanks so much.